I think when you look at, just go on YouTube and look at how many views ESPN gets versus AFTV or the Football Terrace or the United Stand. All of these YouTubers, they get more views, and there's a reason for that because people
Yeah.
like watching their content over ESPN and Steve Nichols and these guys, Craig Burley and those guys. Nobody wants to watch them. No offense, but they don't. Because
They don't.
the numbers speak for themselves.
Kylian Mbappe could have never played football if he grew up in the U.S., in my opinion.
Being from the States, you have to learn how things are over there because MLS is much different than the Premier League, and you're almost stepping into a different realm.
With the 2026 World Cup coming here and a new generation of fans start to become to discover the game, there's no telling where the game's going to be 10, 15, 20 years.
One game changed my life, and that's all it ever takes.
And I can't even tell you how excited I am today for our guest. She is, in my opinion, one of the most talented and knowledgeable on the internet today, specifically when it comes to any story that crosses my fan base, being an Arsenal fan myself. We have Jessica Black from She Knows Arsenal, her brand, her channel, her story on Box to Box today. Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on a Friday right before the weekend. We are in the middle of a little bit of a break from Arsenal standpoint. I think it's a good time as any to, kind of bring you on, tell your story. I'm so excited that you're here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on to Box. This is super cool, and this is a good way to start off my weekend. And yes, I'm enjoying my little bit of break from Arsenal. I'm not going to lie. I love them, but I was definitely happy to see the back of them, So
yeah.
I'm excited to talk to you about, a little bit about me and the future and a little bit of Arsenal. So yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And look, a little bit of a break considering, the last couple of weeks, the festive period and everything it had in store for you and I as fans. The break was kind of needed. I was ready for a little bit of a lull right before we kind of ramp things back up. And so, yeah, let's jump right in. Let's not waste any more time. There's a question we always ask on this show. I'm excited to ask it again. I'm curious for your response. Jessica, who are you today?
Who am I today? And I feel like I'm still a massive, massive fan of the sport. Fan first, always. I'm always trying to figure out different ways of getting as much football into my calendar in my life as possible. So I'm definitely still a massive fan, like I always have been. And I'm a creator. I'm a creator first, or fan first, creator second. Always trying to figure out ways to be more creative and tell more stories. And definitely in 2024, something that I really want to focus on is telling more stories. Stories from people that are not like me, people that are like me. So I would say, yeah, I'm Jessica, the massive football fan, as well as a creator and somebody that's just trying to pave her way, into a career that feels a lot like me. And so far, so good. So yeah, that's pretty much who I am.
I love that. Yeah, so far so good. I will echo that sentiment. I think your journey, if there's one way that I could put my stamp on it from the outside looking in, is that it's non-linear. Is that you've had a crazy road from all the content that I've watched of yours leading up to this point. Inspirational is another word that kind of comes to mind, especially for anyone on this side of the pond who's maybe discovering the sport for the first time, developing opinions around it, and really kind of wants to put those out there. We're going to talk about all of that, right? Your creator journey today, obviously starting off in the earliest of days, your background, your bio, the relationship you had with your family as it pertains to this sport. I still am of the belief that soccer has a long way to go on this side of the world. We're still technically niche, if that's the word that I can use for today. But I still think that we should be looking at those who have somewhat paved the way for that next generation of fans who will become creators, who will, be brave enough to put their opinions on the internet as it scales up. And I think that they're going to be looking towards folks just like you to kind of help do just that. Right. So just start in the beginning. I don't want to, I'm sure you told this story a million times. I don't necessarily think it's a bad story to tell. Right. But I will try to find pockets and gems of info and wisdom as you talk to see if our audience can pick up on some of those. And again, just tell some stories in a unique way on this show. But let's start in the beginning. You're a SoCal native, right? What's the I feel like if there's a market to start with in this country when it comes to soccer, you were living in it from almost the beginning, right? What's the earliest memory you have of this game?
Ooh. I wonder if anybody listening, does AYSO ring a bell? Because anybody that grew up, around here or in the US knows that probably the first time you played soccer was in AYSO. That's my earliest memory. And I just remember everybody in my elementary school, like everybody played. Everyone played.
Hmm.
It was the sport for like young girls. Everyone played. And so around the corner from my house, there was a place called the Ranch, and that's where all the fields were and all that kind of stuff. And I remember my friends all played, and so I asked my parents if they could sign me up. I remember doing a little drill at the elementary school to see what level I was at, and things like that. And that was kind of like my first memory. And then I ended up on a team. I think we were called Poison Ivy. It's green,
I
we
love
had
that.
little green bows, and all that kind of stuff. And that's my earliest memory, probably about 6. And I just was obsessed. Like I used to go to sleep in my little jersey. I loved everything about it. The friends that you would meet, it became like a little family. I'm an only child, so I think that's a big part of it as well. Like, I didn't have anybody, to talk to. So going to games and hanging out with my friends was the big part of my weekend. And every weekend it was like we had our game, but we would watch everybody else's game. We would stay all day. And so it just became a part of the culture. And I think that's everybody that is really into soccer, I think views it more of like a community and a culture more than a sport. I think that's what makes it different. And it's felt like that from the beginning for me. So yeah, that's kind of, my very first memory is AYSL.
Yeah, no, I think I feel like I've heard that from multiple fans who grew up in your part of the country, right? I think the West Coast in general, if you didn't play AYSO, you might have missed out on a really good opportunity to form those relationships that you were forming. I'm really curious. I feel like that's so unique to where you lived, right? Growing up here in Texas, it just wasn't the same. The other
Mm.
football reigned supreme here, right? So just a very, very different upbringing around the sport. Did you try anything else? Was soccer it from day one, or was there other sports maybe your parents thought could have been a good fit? Maybe there were other extracurriculars that you were kind of, had your eye on, or was soccer always it?
I tried almost everything because
Mm.
I was like an athlete and I loved doing everything. So let's see, I did basketball. My best friend Asia was huge in basketball, so I tried that. Didn't love it because after 6 fouls you're out, and so I was out a lot. um let's see, softball, tried that as well. I was okay. I felt like it was just, I don't know, something about it I couldn't connect. I did taekwondo. That was actually the closest thing that ever got to soccer for me. I actually started taekwondo before soccer, and I got to like all the way to provisional black belt, and I had to choose between continuing on and getting my black belt or go at soccer, and I picked soccer. But I loved taekwondo. It was weird because it was all about like, the tradition and, being disciplined and things like that. And I love that. I love that from the beginning. And I did track and field as well, but that was mostly just hang out with friends. Like anybody that knows me for real knows I don't love to run, which is weird because they're like, well, you love soccer. And I'm like, no, I love soccer. I don't like to run for no
Mm.
reason. Like, you know what I mean? And so
100%. You need the ball. You need the ball.
yeah, there has to be a ball or something there. So I tried everything and I love sport, but it was always just soccer was different for me. And I'm glad I tried other things, but yeah, soccer is just anybody that knows it's different.
Yeah.
It's the vibes, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And, I can imagine as you were, kind of exploring every one of these paths, right? And I'm a brand new parent myself, so I'm trying to like,
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. He's 8 months old. I'm trying to get into a point. People are asking about Project Mbappe and like trying to go down that path. I don't see myself doing just that. But I imagine your parents played a pivotal role, right? Once you kind of decided, they were always supportive, I imagine, but once you decided soccer was the path, what kind of role did they play in your development as a player? I don't know what age you started taking it very seriously and you wanted this to be your future, but what was it like having them around and how supportive were they?
Yeah, I think I'm really blessed to have both my parents are still here. Both my parents were very involved in everything that I did. So, I feel very blessed in that because I know not everybody has that opportunity. Um, my mom is probably she's my best friend. We're very close, and so anything that I've ever wanted to do, she tried to be involved in, and so she even refed for AYSO. Just to
Wow.
get involved. And she was a good ref too, by the way. And so it was they always let me choose what I wanted to do. If I want to do something and try it, they always found a way to make it happen. Uh, and that's just something that I know not a lot of people have. My mom was, like I said, she did a lot of the getting to know the sport, taking me to the sport. She did because my dad he worked a lot, so he wasn't able to always take me to games or to practice or whatever. So my mom was pretty much like the on the ground kind of person, and then my dad would obviously be there for games. He also coached one of my AYSO teams, so he did his part too. But they played different roles. My dad always wanted me to do like extra training and stuff like that when I got into club. He made sure I had an extra trainer all the time. Like I always had somebody additional that I was going to. And my mom was more of like the cheerleader. So they kind of did their role together to help me keep going. And so, yeah, like I feel you need both. You need the motivation and the person that's telling you this is what you need to do to get better. And then you also need the person that's kind of by your side that's like, you're great. You're doing great, honey. And they did that.
Yeah, no, I think you do. I think it has to be kind of that yin and yang, right? You need the balance because otherwise, it just, I don't know. I feel like kids at some point burn out, right? It's too much serious trying to develop quickly all the time. I think that takes you down a path that leads you astray from where you wanted to go. But I think the relationship you might have had with your dad, considering I don't want to pretend to understand it on a deep level, right? But I do firmly believe that those who have pushed themselves to a certain layer of greatness. And I will say, you're a D1, former D1 soccer player. That's a level of greatness that over 90% of players who play in high school don't ever reach. They just don't ever reach that level. That's the statistic today. So, with that in mind, as you were getting a little more serious, I mean, did the relationship with your dad kind of, I don't know, did it change? Did it become more serious? Do you feel like all you guys were talking about was football at some point? Like, I don't know. Did any of that ever play a factor? And when did you really start thinking that this was, as a player, going to be a strong opportunity for you?
I don't actually think I ever really tapped into I think one regret that I do have is like I never really tapped into the seriousness of it until a little bit later on. Like it was just so fun and like I was one of those types of people where it just came easy. So because it came easy, I didn't necessarily always do all the things that I probably could have been doing. But my dad always kind of kept me honest in that way. And like I said, always had like a trainer and stuff like that to push me. And there were times I never really thought about the college aspect of things. I was just kind of like flying by the seat of my pants. And my dad may have not been there for like all of practices and stuff like that, but he always made sure he kept that part of it in line, and was like, if you're going to do this, you should try to get a scholarship. You should, are these different teams going to be here? Are you playing at the highest level? Are these colleges going to be here? And I remember before I went to college, I actually was thinking about quitting, and just ending after high school. And I was like, I'm just going to end after high school and just go, to an HBCU. I wanted to go to a historically Black college and just kind of end my journey there. And my dad was like, absolutely not. You're going to go somewhere and get the scholarship because you did all this hard work and you should do it. And I'm glad that he did that because I feel like even though college, which is a whole nother story, didn't exactly go the way that I wanted it to in terms of soccer, I think getting the scholarship and having that, being able to tell people like, I got a scholarship to go to a D1 school, that feels good, and it was a lot of hard work that went into it. So I think he made sure that all that hard work didn't go to waste and I took it serious, because when you're kind of just like naturally good at things, sometimes you don't push. And sometimes the people that go the furthest are not usually they're not always the most talented. They're the ones that work the hardest. And so I think that's what my dad always brought to the table. And so, yeah, he wasn't always at every single practice, or, he wasn't always there, and we didn't always talk about things, but he made sure that I went as far as I could, and I took my talent as far as I could. And when I decided to end after college, he was fine with that. I went in a different direction. I went to fashion school, but at least I went as far as I could. And I would not have done that if he hadn't pushed me, you know? So
Was
like I
what?
said, it was, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to ask just to double down on that. Was he able to motivate you without really saying anything? Right? I feel like because I almost hear you talk about your dad, and it sounds like my dad, right? And I feel like I had this incessant need over time to it sounds weird, but as a player specifically, make him proud. As a player, have him be content, excited, satisfied on every level with how I played. And if I wasn't, if he had criticism for me, that was always the motivation. Was I want my dad to be very content with how I played, and he didn't have to say anything for that, right? I mean, you just never really had to. And I feel like with some of the heights that you reached as a player, and hearing you talk about your relationship with him, was that ever a factor as well? I'm just curious, on
Yeah.
that level.
I feel like he always added the other side of the coin that I didn't always think about, and my mom is such a cheerleader for me that I can do no wrong. But he always added that extra layer of like, well, are you actually doing as much as you can? If you're not playing, is it just because, the coach is not a fan of you? Is it because you're not doing this? Like, what could these other players be doing that you're not doing? And I think sometimes you need that little bit of tough love, because it's not coming from a place of judgment or like trying to make you feel bad. It's coming from a place of like realness. Sometimes I feel like every time something doesn't go somebody's way, the first thing is that, oh, that person just doesn't like me, or they're just not seeing it from my perspective. But I think that's something, a good way of like that he motivated me, was adding that level of like realness that maybe my mom didn't always add. She was always on my side when it would seem like he was on the other person's side, but really it was just he was trying to bring that extra layer. And there were times where I was not working as hard as I could. Like, if I'm honest, like I wasn't, so he definitely brought that in. Is that too loud?
No, you're good.
He just he motivated me in a way which he just kept me grounded. And I think that that was super important,
Yeah.
but there wasn't any like beyond like when he was my coach for AYSO, there was times where he yelled and stuff like that, where it was like a little bit like, oh my gosh, you're doing the most. But he didn't yell, he didn't scream, he didn't get it, he didn't do any of that kind of stuff. It was just when he tapped in and decided to like, talk to me about soccer, it was always coming from a place of, okay, if you're not playing right now, what could you do more? And I respect that, because he made it so it was always in my control, if that makes sense. Where
Mhm.
if you don't get that perspective, sometimes you can become like a martyr, and he doesn't want that. He didn't want that for me. And I think that that's important, because I take that into my life now, where when things don't go my way, I don't always just go, well, oh, that person doesn't, they don't see it my way. I'm like, did I actually do enough? And so that's how he motivated me.
Yeah, perspective and context. And I think it's what good parents do best, right? Is give you a perspective that you probably didn't have because you're only used to seeing things from your side.
Exactly.
I think that's massive, right? And like you said it right now, it probably plays a role in how you view every aspect of your day to day, whether it's dealing with online trolls or trying to figure out what it is you're going to talk about the next day, whatever it may be, right? I think that perspective and that context goes a
And
long way.
And the thing is, though, it's like he doesn't do anything or say anything that he's not doing himself. My dad worked at the same job for like 34 years, and he
Wow.
worked hard, and he did other people's job. He was always open to helping other people. He got his master's degree at USC, like while he was working full time. Like, so the things that he would tell me are not things that he didn't do on his own. When
Yeah.
he talks about like doing everything that you can, it's because he's doing everything that he can, And so I respect that, because it's not like he's just sitting on the couch doing nothing and then telling me like, well, blah, he's like, are you doing everything you can? because he knows what it feels like to be doing everything. And
Yeah.
he didn't always get what he deserved, but he knew at the end of the day, he did everything that he could. And that puts everything into your hands. I did everything I could. So yeah, I respect him for that for sure.
Yeah. And you always regret the things you didn't do versus the things you did, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just how I look at it as well. So
Agreed.
I think that, look, those relationships, I feel like people don't talk about them enough, right? Even thinking back to, I'm not sure, I'm sure you checked it out being an Arsenal fan, right? But, recently Thierry Henry's, interview with Stephen Bartlett
Good
was
question.
massive. And it kind of just it reinforced this idea that I have that, parents play this wild role in our development, and so often we can't see what they're trying to do, the message they're trying to get across until
Yeah.
years later after the fact. But that's just how it goes. And I feel like with the heights you reach as a player, I know how hard it is to get to that level. I know your parents had to play a significant role in that, but let's talk about that. You made it all the way to Georgia State. Again, you traveled, right? Think about it, from SoCal to the East Coast to play soccer. Not an easy thing to do. So many kids try it every year, don't ever get there, but you did. I imagine there's information you wish you had. I know when I played college, I played D2. I know when I played college soccer, it felt like a job, and I wish somebody would have told me that going in.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as enjoyable. I mean, describe that process to me, right? Just deciding that you want to go to Georgia State, and then ultimately arriving at a point where you're like, I don't know if this was it for you, but just some knowledge that you wish you had going in.
Yeah, I think it was a job for sure. So I get what you're saying with that. You don't have a life outside of it. That's it. You're there to do that and get your education. That's for sure. But I think for me, it's I wanted to make sure that I grew up in a place where there wasn't a lot of people that look like me. And so I'd mentioned before that I wanted to go to a historically Black college. And I couldn't necessarily do that and get like a full ride scholarship too. Like I couldn't do that. Um, and so Georgia State kind of gave me the best of both worlds, because I think at that time Georgia State might have been like 20 or 30% Black.
Oh,
And that's a
wow.
lot for a school that's not historically Black, you know? And I was like, okay, so I can get the best of both worlds. It's in Atlanta, which was, I was like, okay, that's where I want to go, because I watch music videos. That's where everything was. I was like, okay, yeah, okay, let's do it. And so, and I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do, like degree wise or anything, but I was like, I'll figure it out when I get there. But I'm going to play soccer. I'm going to be near people that look like me, and I'm going to try something different, because I always wanted to go away to college. Like I didn't want to stay in LA or California. So I got there, and I'll be honest, like it wasn't my experience at Georgia State was not really what I would have wanted. It was a fairly new, not newish program, but it was a program that was growing, and they were recruiting new people and new types of players. And the group that I came in with was really good. We were all really talented, but the people from before were maybe didn't play at the same level. And I don't know that I was kind of there in the transitional phase. It was weird. And so things didn't really go the way that I wanted them to go. I felt many times that I wanted to quit, because it just, I don't know, it's like, it's such a long story. And like some of it, I just feel like, but I- it's, if I had wanted to end it in a certain way, it wouldn't have been like that. And so it wasn't my best time, but I would say that like for anybody that, wants to play soccer in college, do it, because just because my experience was not great, I know a lot of people that have had great experiences. And one thing that it does is it forces you to grow up quickly, because you have to be responsible. You're responsible to going to practice and, training on your own, and also getting the grades and, learning life. It's a big step, but it's a good step, and so my experience was not the best. But I think anybody that wants to play soccer in college should do it, because outside of some of the things that I experienced, like I told you before with AYSO, longtime friends, loads of laughs, you grow up together. It's great, so yeah, but It's definitely it's a difference between going to from like travel club ball or whatever to like it being a job. That's
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree wholeheartedly. It doesn't seem like it would be night and day different, but it almost
It
is,
is.
right? Yeah, you're not if no one sets the table for you, it really is eye opening when you get there and you understand that no one's going to hold your hand, no one's
Yeah,
going to take you to training, no one's going to help you do all the things that are going to make you successful on the pitch or in the classroom. You kind of have to grow up and do it, and
yeah.
it's not the easiest for everybody.
No, it's definitely not. And I saw many people that just couldn't they just couldn't do it because it's just like some people just want to go to school,
Mhm.
and I get that, or it takes away from the fun of it, and you're traveling and you're tired and you're training. And so I get that, some people just didn't love it. But if you
Did you ever think about transferring out of curiosity?
I did. I did. I thought about transferring. But I stuck it out. I stuck it out because I actually liked being at Georgia State. It just was the program just wasn't what I wanted or imagined it to be. It was just like an environment where it was just I felt like soccer was not the main thing. Winning and being the best was not the main thing. There were a lot of extra things going on, a lot of unseriousness. That's what I'll say. And so it just wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And I thought about transferring, but I stuck it out. And I'm glad I did because I love the school. And so it wasn't really about the school, it was just about the program. But
Yeah,
that was just my experience. Um,
yeah.
yeah.
No, I agree. I think and that's something that's interesting perspective that you just mentioned, right? That is solely your experience. I don't think the show is sitting here and dragging the college soccer experience. It's been positive for so many of my
Oh
former
yeah.
teammates. I imagine yours as well.
No.
There's tons of positives to take away from it. But I think it's always curious, right, when you have a story like this, because expectation setting is a massive part of that. And there's things you can learn from where you've been. This whole time that you're at Georgia State, by the way, we didn't even get to this part, right? But you being obviously a massive Arsenal fan, you playing for a club called Arsenal back in the day, like it was destiny, right? It was meant to be. Are you so what this at the time that you're in college? I know I was trying my best to watch whatever European soccer was available. Back then, you got to keep in mind, right? I mean, I think you and I were in college at similar times, and back then you had to take whatever match they would give you. I mean, they weren't showing everything. They were showing the big matches, maybe, and that's really it.
Maybe.
Were you still kind of as adamant about Arsenal at that time as not as you are today, right? But in general, were you trying to follow along with soccer outside of your playing as much as possible?
It was really hard. I would say during like college, I didn't have as big of a like a my I still loved Arsenal, but I wasn't watching as much because I was living life.
Mm.
I was in college and away from home and playing. So it was tough, like in around this that time, like right when we moved to the Emirates, basically like 2007 to like
Mhm.
2011-ish time, like it just I was full in college. I didn't really start watching games consistently again until I got out of Georgia State. But yeah, I mean, you don't I watched a lot of college soccer because a lot of the girls that I played with in high school and with club, like I would try to keep up with them. A lot of them played like USC and and Stanford and stuff. So I watched a lot of that. And obviously you pick up like on the odd MLS match here and there. And I always watched the US women. No matter what, like I always stuck with the US women. Like people that know me know that that's me. I love the US women so much. They're Brandy Chastain, that's my girl.
Oh, seriously, yeah. I mean,
I
the
love her so
memories,
much.
the
The
memories.
memories, that team. And
Yeah.
so I always stuck with that. But Arsenal, it got a little hard to keep up with it in college, but then I picked it back up after.
Yeah, I know what you mean though, right? Like it is you're juggling so much, you can't keep your head on a swivel. You can only do it for so long. Like you really have to pick and choose what you're consuming. But
Yeah.
the reason I ask is because I feel like this is maybe my boomer moment. I don't know. I'd like for some of the audience to understand especially the audience that knows how accessible the game is today versus where it was and how hard I think our generation really had to work to find the matches, continue to have the fandom that fans are expected to have when they support their teams. I mean, I don't know, like, could you just explain kind of what that was like? And maybe I think I think your story around how you discovered Arsenal versus I think I remember I've heard you say Manchester United was the first game you ever watched. Why Arsenal? What didn't stick out in a positive way about United? I feel like they could have been your team. No?
Maybe. I feel like so people have to back then there was no ESPN app, there was no Peacock app. None of this existed. The access that we have right now, when I hear people complaining about I can't see so and so game, I'm like, you guys just don't understand. It used to be so hard to find anything. If it wasn't on regular TV, you were not getting it because it didn't exist, you know? And
Agreed.
so yeah, back then you would just the MLS games were obviously on. You could find actually League MX that was out there too as well. But yeah, when we tried to watch like any sort of Premier League, it would come on, and like I've said, you would only see like the best teams play. So yeah, I did see Manchester United first, and I was like, wow, like I'd never seen anything like this. Like when you see like a European soccer match for the first time, it's totally different. You know, you're looking at it's like, what is this? They're singing the songs, it's crazy. And so instantly I was like, this is the vibe that I want to be a part of. I love this so much. And so, you know, I seen obviously Manchester United, and I was like, okay, this team is cool. You know, Andy Cole, Dwight York, Roy Keane, all these types of people. It was great. But then like the next weekend when I saw Arsenal, I was like, this team just is it for me. And like I feel like a lot of people that get to choose their team, because people that are obviously in the UK, they usually don't get to choose. They usually get their dad's team. If you get to choose, you know what it's like. You just know when you see the team. You know, I've seen people like from the USA, like I just saw Aston Villa one day and I just love them. And I'm like, you know what, I get that. You know, sometimes it doesn't make sense. But for me, it was first of all, Arson. I thought he was the coolest person on the planet. I was like, this guy looks so cool. He's like a professor. He's so cool.
Did you think Arsenal was named after arson?
For a little bit, I did, for sure. I think most people did think that. They're like, Arsenal, that makes so much sense.
Yep.
But my mom, you know, was talking about like Thierry Henry. She loves Thierry Henry, by the way, my mom. But seeing Thierry Henry play for the first time, you realize that you're watching something really special. I've never seen a player like that before. Thierry Henry completely changed my mind about what a footballer was. Vieira as well. He's captain of Arsenal at that time. He was special. I feel like some people, they think that he was just like a DM. He was more than that, you guys. Like he was so much more than that. I cannot even describe the type of player that he was. And the football that they played back then was direct. You know, it wasn't tiki-taka style. It was direct, it was fast, but it was entertaining. The Arsenal back then was like poetry in motion, fun, like fast. It was great, you know? And so yeah, it was just love at first sight, basically. And a lot of the players were black as well. And that's something I've never seen before. You know, when you grow up watching like, you know, MLS or US Women or whatever, there was always like one black face, you know, and that's fine, you know, because you get it. You get that, you get why that is the way that it is. When I was playing, I was always usually the only black girl on the team. So, but seeing all those black players and the way that they're playing, I was like, this is different, you know? And then obviously you find out that there are like loads of black people in Europe and black people everywhere. And then because when I was 13, 14, I don't think I didn't know any of that. You know, I didn't know any of that.
Just
you know?
because of where you grew up?
Yeah, like in when you grow like growing up out here, like when you think about Europe, you don't think that there's anybody other than like when you think European, you think, you know, people that are lighter skin, fairer skin. So that was like the first time that I realized that there was like tons of people in Europe. And obviously like my parents took me on like vacations to Europe. And that was like a 15, 16 was like the first time that I went to Europe. And that's where I saw it like firsthand. I was like, wow, like I don't know anything. you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. It's eye opening, right? It
Yeah,
literally like you have these
sure.
own expectations and it shatters all of them like a
Yeah,
thousand percent. But I know exactly what you mean when you say you saw Arsenal and they just looked different,
yeah,
right? And I think it was arson. I think it was arson, and that's what attracted me. Arsenal being like the only club that I could choose because I was born into some kind of fandom. My parents don't. My family doesn't watch Premier League. They are La Liga exclusively. They watch Barcelona only, and so I was born into that.
yeah,
But I got to choose my Premier League team, and I got to choose the league in general. And I feel like what stood out to me was I think Arson had this ability to recognize talent that wasn't quote unquote prem talent. They weren't the most physical, they weren't the biggest, they weren't the fastest. It was, you think about some of the French players he brought in or the African talent or just, South American talent. He brought in talent that I think fans weren't used to seeing in the prem. And it felt weird. It felt against everything that Fergie had built at United and I don't know, it like almost in like kind of a hipster way. I was like, that's cool. I like that. Like he's
yeah.
choosing to be different. And that's what attracted me most of the teams. When you say the team just looked different and it felt like that was your team, it speaks to me. I think that's
Yeah.
honestly why I chose it. And I think it's got me through the tough times, right? As a fan prior
If
to
you
2020, right?
if you grew up like a lot of it's like a lot of people that watch Arsenal also like Barcelona and vice versa. Like American fans in particular.
Hmm.
Because I feel like when Arson fully like like once the George Graham players left and we moved to the Emirates, Arson's philosophy changed a little bit, and he went from like that combination of his philosophy and George Graham to almost like a Barcelona style. And we saw smaller players come in, technical players, positionless players. That was something that nobody was really doing at the time.
Hmm.
And we had like Rosicky and Kleb and Nasri and all these types of players that were just technicians. You could
Hmm.
call them wingers, you could call them creative midfielders, but they were all just so techy and like, yeah, it was different.
Yeah.
Obviously, like I started watching The Invincibles, so it was a little bit different because it was the combination of George Graham's Arsenal and Arsene. But once we got to the Emirates and got into like 2008, 2009, 2010, that's where the football really changed. And a lot of people now like they really think of that is Arsenal football. Tiki taka, one touch, two touch, those goals, like what is it, the Norwich goal, where it was like
Oh man, the one
one touch.
touches all the way around. Wow.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what a lot of people resonate with when it comes to Arsenal, and I totally understand that. And that's why, like now, obviously Arteta is different than that, and I think people are coming around to the realization that he's probably not going to be just like Arsene. You know what I mean? But when we talk about the Arsenal way, I think we are really talking about the way that Arsene built the team in like 2008, 2009, 2010, which is
Yeah.
different.
It is. It is different. I didn't even think about that. That's actually kind of eye-opening from my perspective. Barcelona fans seeing value in, or maybe even just light similarities in the style of play that Arsene chose to implement. Yeah, I can see it 100%. From my perspective, I was thinking just like the players, like even like we talked about Thierry Henry. Thierry Henry was just obviously a magician, but he was just different. Like you didn't see French players like him coming into the Prem and
Yeah.
adapting position over position to styles of play and being successful with it. Like you just didn't. There was one way to play in the Premier League. It was fast. It was physical. You either could handle it or you couldn't. And I felt like Arsenal debunked that theory that
Oh,
you didn't have to play that way to be successful.
no, and Thierry was I still feel his story is just so good because he was widely considered a flop when he left Juventus.
Hmm.
Um, and Arsene kind of converted him from like just like a true winger to like more of a striker forward. And Arsene had this really good ability to take almost like what people would consider flops or damaged goods and make them look so much better. And so you have these incomplete players that would come to Arsenal and would just look so good. And it's weird calling Thierry Henry that now, but that's what he was. Like he wasn't a player that came in and was like he was not a star. Like he just wasn't. And that's one thing I loved about Arsene was that he could find value in places where people didn't think there was any value. He was one of the first managers to go to places like Africa and find players that nobody was looking at, and they would become superstars. And his talent ID was unmatched. Like
Mhm.
it really was. And so, yeah,
I
Arsene was
know.
just that guy.
It
He really
really
was.
he really was. And I mentioned French players. I mean, you took one for your own, right, as your favorite player. You know, Pires was it's crazy how underrated that guy is. Like really. Like I feel like no one in an era where wingers didn't exist
Yeah.
because they really were just like wide midfielders.
Yeah.
He kind of changed the persona of that position. Um why is he your favorite player?
You said Pires?
Yeah.
So how do I explain? He shouldn't have been as good as he was. He was slew-footed. He was taller, slew-footed, and kind of slow. Not really somebody that you would want to be like a winger.
Mhm.
But the guy was so good. He was like a force of nature, and he was so fun to watch. And there's a lot of if you watch like old like tapes of the Invincibles or like old videos of the Invincibles, you always see Pires pop up with these like weird goals every once in a while where it'd be like you would just see him come out of frame and just like pop it in the back of the net. He always knew where to be and when to be there. He was different. Like he was a different type of player. You think of wingers now, you have to be these 1v1 merchants, you have to do all the flicks and the guy was just he was just class. Like he was just class. And I like him because he was a player that people didn't really talk about that much. People talked about Bergkamp, people talked about Thierry, but it feels like people don't talk about Pires as much. And he was integral to that team, but he was different. He just wasn't like a typical winger.
Very
Um,
different.
yeah, he's a niche player. I feel like he's a hipster's choice. Um,
Yeah.
he reminds me of the player that kind of reminds me of him is the guy that's at Napoli. I can't say his name,
Oh,
but
Kvaratskhelia, yeah.
yeah, kind of like
Mhm.
that, where he's another one. He's not really a 1v1 merchant at your typical touchline winger, but he's definitely a dangerous, dangerous forward. Knows where to be at the right time, has a bit of skill. And I like players that are a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I would like the Pires style winger to come back in style because those are fun days.
Yeah, I don't know if that winger will ever come back in style, unfortunately. I agree with you. I had this hot take that Pep killed the winger position, that he removed all creativity, that we've optimized for efficiency in the modern age of football.
Oh, you're
And
speaking my friend's language. My friend Gabby, shout out to Gabby. She says that all the time in our
yeah,
group chat every day. She's like, Pep has killed football. And it's true. I mean, we love Pep, don't get me wrong, but he's not fun. His football style is not fun. It takes away all the individualistic aspects. And I get why he did that, like you said, to get the efficiency. But when you get more efficient, you take away the margin for players to have like that little bit of creativity, so you kill off the Neymars and those types, uh, and football goes in cycles. It'll come back. That love
yeah,
that for football will come back. It'll probably be when Pep's gone. And we don't know when that'll be, but it'll come back.
I hope so. I
It
really
will.
do, for football's sake and for the fans, of course, right? I mean, just sitting here, listening to you talk about this club that I love so much. It's obviously your breadth of knowledge around Arsenal dates back years. You have so much of it. It makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world how you could scale that into wanting to share more of that knowledge and your opinions
Yeah.
with the internet, right? She knows Arsenal. Um, I'm really curious because I think it's way more difficult for you to do this than it is for others like myself or anybody else to do it for obvious reasons, right? Female, black, you're American, that's its own, gatekeeping stigma all by itself.
Yeah.
You have layers on top of that. So I don't know, where does the courage come from? Like I said, I've tuned into live streams, I've read through the comments. It's kind of crazy, to be honest. Like you you kind of wear this cape, right? You know, this badge that I feel like you're just not going to be deterred from what you want to get out there. Where does all that come from? How did you scale that to where you are today?
I just love it. Like, I don't know how to describe it. I love it. I love it. Like, I love talking about the game. I could talk about it for hours. But, you look in the comments and you'll see the odd person saying, like, oh, fix me a sandwich, or you don't know anything, you're American. I don't know. It's fuel for the fire, man. I just love it. You get so much more positivity than you do negativity. And some of the best people that I've met have been on this journey. It's just, I don't know, I'm building my community and I'm having fun doing it. And, I have people tell me like that watching me do what I do is motivation for them. So I feel a sense of responsibility as well to keep going and not be deterred at all. And I'm not. I tell people all the time, I'm not going anywhere. So no matter what you say, nothing is going to change. I love what I do and I love this game. And I feel like, I know you have a personal passion of this as well, is that like making soccer, football more cool in America. It feels a little bit like a hipster thing to like, a niche thing, like you said. But I feel like if Americans really just gave it a chance, they would love it. They would love it. And so even if I could just keep doing my thing and, people start tapping in a little bit more, it's funny because like I did a piece yesterday and we were shooting in a guy's house. His name is Corey. Shout out Corey. And he doesn't watch soccer at all. And he was like, he's talking about how like, younger people under 30 really do like soccer. I'm over 30, but I watched the Beckham documentary, right? And it just got me thinking that like we are really in a time where like things like the Beckham documentary and Ted Lasso are bringing people closer to the sport, and we are very far away, but we have to keep talking about the sport. American voices have to keep talking about the sport, and eventually people will come around. They'll come around. It's come a long way, so far. So yeah, that's my motivation really, is just to keep talking about it, open up opportunities for others, because we probably won't be the beneficiary of all the things that we're doing. It'll be the next generation, but at least we will have put in our work, and so that's my motivation. Bring the sport closer to, Americans, keep talking, be a female voice out there, and keep having fun.
Yeah.
It's the vibes.
100%. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I think the next question I have based on that response, though, is you formed this identity through your content that is one refreshing, because this is not a shot at AFTV by any means. It's not built on the reactions. It's not built on any perceived negativity. It's built on our circumstances and the tactical awareness you have of the game layered on top of the circumstances that we have as a team, as a club, as a fan base. How did you form that identity? There's a million directions you can go with content. There's a million ways you can put a channel out there, a brand out there. But you have to be, as well as anybody, you have to be consistent with that voice and that brand to truly grow. You could have gone a million directions. And I've heard you say in previous, interviews and pods, AFTV was, of course, there. I think for so many fans, that fan group as content creators paved the way for so many of us. But what made you want to go in this direction versus any other?
I mean, I went in the direction that allows me to be exactly who I am. I went in the direction that I don't have to think about what I'm saying before I say it. I feel like when first of all, if you want to grow quickly, make a channel based on something very binary. Either you be totally negative or totally positive. Those are the ways to grow real fast in this industry. But then you set yourself up a little bit, because then even if you do feel like, say you're always negative, say we start playing well, you almost can't enjoy it. Because you're the negative person. I don't want that. And when things are not going well, I want to be able to say I don't think things are going well as well. I don't want to be like this fake positive person either. I want to be able to call it exactly how I see it. And it makes you grow slower. You know, it takes more time. Um, and but it feels more authentic to me, you know? So most people would consider my channel balanced, um, more than anything. Not too positive, not too negative, nothing like that, just balanced. I just keep it real because I just want to be myself. I don't want to have to overthink my narrative, you know? And I know a lot of people, they have to do that. I've been around long enough to know that there are some people that literally have to sit and think about what they're going to say because it has to fit their narrative or their agenda. And for me, that's just too much thinking. You know, I just want people to know that, like, I'm keeping it real. I try to keep them entertained, but ultimately, I just try to bring them the right information, try to give them a good perspective, an all around view of what's going on at Arsenal, and not try to veer in any one direction. I get things wrong. You know, I say things exactly how I see them and how I feel, and whether I get it right or wrong is fine. Like, I feel like I've gotten maybe the Raya thing wrong. I was a big like, Raya's gonna be fine. He hasn't really worked out, but that's how I truly felt in the moment. You know, so I'm not just gonna stick with it. You know, now like I tell the truth. I'm like, it's not working out. You know, but even though my original opinion was that it would, some people would just keep on, you know, keep on, keep
Yeah.
on, keep on, no matter what. But I'm just like, it's not working out, you know? It hasn't gone the way that I thought it was, but that's authentic to me. But I get that some people feel like they have to have an agenda or a narrative. That's that's how you live. I can't live that way. I need to be able to turn on the camera and say exactly how I feel. And that feels good to me. I don't want my channel to ever feel concocted, you know? Like I want it to
Like you had to
feel
put an agenda out there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, because that's too much work. That's hard. I don't want to do that.
Yeah, well, I think it's hard regardless. I think even being as honest as you are, because the internet has this way of holding you accountable, keeping receipts, so to speak, right? I think it's ridiculous. I think people are allowed to change their minds. They're allowed to feel differently than they felt yesterday. I've slept since then, right?
Yeah.
But I think, you know, and to do it for months on end, keep your head down, keep working, keep grinding is it's one of the hardest things you could do, right? Is just be consistent with that and tune out the noise that just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, it can also watching your stream, especially if you're a female soccer fan who's maybe in the shoes that you were years ago, never having put an opinion out there, but maybe feels like it could be a path for them. Maybe they get deterred seeing some of the interactions that you have on your channel and your streams at times, right? I'm just kind of curious. Have you noticed an uptick in any way of female content creators now starting to be a little more bullish with their opinions and putting them out there and creating brands that are, you know, in all honesty, are kind of paying homage to what you built up to this point?
Yeah, I think so. I think I have seen some, not as much as I'd like. I'd like to see more women out
Hmm.
there. But I do think I have seen, there's a girl that actually I follow that I love her. She's amazing. She's a Man United fan. Her name is Alice Abrams. So if you guys, you know, are on YouTube, please, you know, subscribe to her. She is probably one of the freshest out there in terms of like a young woman that says exactly how she feels about her club. She does watch alongs and, you know, reviews and all that kind of stuff. And I see, you know, Sophie is out there as well. She's another young woman too, Arsenal fan. She says exactly how she feels. Breath of fresh air. I'm sure there's some other ones I'm not thinking about right now off the top of my head, but I would love to see more. But you do see women out there putting their opinions out there, whether it's really consistently or for fun, hobby, whatever. But they're coming. They're coming. More women are going to get more comfortable talking about this space. I think you see a lot more, obviously, in the women's side because it's more of a comfortable environment, but more will come over to this side because I have group chats and there are so many women out there that love this game. And so, yeah, if they watch me, they know it's safe. You know, it's fine. Nobody's going to do anything to you. Tune it out. But yeah, there's some popping up, and I would love for them to just stay consistent and keep going. But I would definitely love to see more because I feel like the more people see women talking about it, the more normalized it becomes because it's like we're just like you guys. Like it's not that big of a deal. Like our brains don't work differently. Like it's not that deep, you know?
Seriously.
And it's a game for everybody. So yeah.
Yeah. it's a game for everybody. I think that's the most important part there. And I know I'm sure you've harped on that message numerous times, but I'll be honest, I've noticed an uptick, and I don't know if it's the algorithm just serving me more content because I do tune into you so regularly, or if it's any other amount of things on the internet. But I feel like there should be more. I think sometimes it's I don't know, we're almost getting to a point where I feel like I've heard the same opinion over and over again. Sometimes it's overly negative, sometimes just wildly unrealistic, and then you get you come across a breath of fresh air, and sometimes it's just a female voice giving you the real knowledge that you need, the real opinions that they have. But it's not. It's again, it's just different. It feels like you said balanced and
Yeah,
in a really great way.
yeah. I actually so I do have like Patreon and stuff like that, and then we have like a signature podcast on there, and I actually rebranded it for 2024. It's actually like the first time I'm talking about it, because I've been teasing it a little bit as well, where I actually have a couple of people with me. It's going to be a regular weekly podcast called the Cannon Club, and the whole premise around it is not your average Arsenal podcast. It's not the same people. It's not the same vibes. It's my friend Harry, who I've known for a long time, who's actually on the channel before, Laura Kirk, who's been on my channel as well, who goes
Really?
to all the games, Colleen, she's been on the football terrace with me. She knows everything. She knows everything from European to Arsenal women. She's fantastic. And then also my friend Femi, who he's actually from DC, and he has great opinions, and he's bold, and the whole premise around it is to give new voices and a younger generation of Arsenal fans that are going to sit back and kick it and just talk about Arsenal. No holds bar, no rules, no anything, because I just feel like we've seen it. We've seen so many Arsenal, but they're all the same. It's the same types of people. And to be honest, if you're not like a journalist, sometimes people don't take your opinion seriously if you're just like a fan. And I feel like the fans sometimes have the best opinions because we speak like fans. Nobody wants to be overly taught. Like, we don't want to hear it that way. We want to have fun. We want to be engaged. Like, you know what I mean? We want to hear the real. So the premise behind it is just a bunch of friends at a bar talking to each other about the Arsenal. And so that will actually be the first episode of that will actually come out on Monday.
Wow.
But it kind of ties into what we were just talking about, is like, people actually want to hear people that look and sound like them talk. They don't want to see the same people they don't have anything in common with. And so my whole thing is creating content from my perspective, because I do feel like I represent a fan that's like other people. And I'm not like stuffy, or I don't have any professional background or anything like that. I'm just somebody who loves the game. And I feel like it comes across. You don't want to be spoken at. You want to be spoken to. You want to feel like your opinion matters just as much as everybody else's. And so that's the whole premise around my brand, is just keeping it 100 and just being a new voice, because I feel
I
like
love
that's where
that.
content is going. I don't feel like people want to see the same suits talking about nonsense.
Yes, please. I mean, you are preaching to the choir. I think the Cannon Club, by the way, great name. I think that's something I'm definitely gonna check out myself. And I think anybody who's tuning in should, especially if you're an Arsenal fan. I think we need stronger voices. When you mentioned Laura Kirk, I think she's hilarious, by the way. I follow her on Twitter, and her to this day, the most memorable post was I think her saying, like, if Kai scores today, I'm gonna go out and buy a kit, and then he did happens. Yeah, it's that, I feel like I've been there where, like, I think, all right, I gotta do it. I got my foot in my mouth. I'm gonna go ahead and pay up, so to speak. So
Yeah.
yeah, she's great. Her content is awesome. I got a feeling that show's gonna be a hit. So again, congrats to you and the squad there with putting that show together. But
Thanks.
you mentioned the suits. I've heard you say this before. We don't necessarily need to be always relying upon solely their opinions, and I think people are kind of getting tired of it. I always use the term legacy media, because the only
Yeah.
way that I can describe it, right? Like listening to Stevie Nickel talk about
Yeah.
Saka and saying, like, oh, when he, the famous quote, right?
Loves
In my
to roll
opinion, it's
around.
famous. Yeah,
Doesn't like.
rolls around, or like when he said that Saka tends to be a player who, when he picks up a knock like this, he stays out for quite some time.
Yep.
I'm like, are you aware of the record this man has set in the number of appearances in a row he has as a player?
And
Like,
no one checked him.
how this is a simple 5-minute Google search. I don't understand why a real fan would not have gotten that wrong. That's the only way I could put it. It's a real fan would not have gotten that wrong. And this is why I think what you're doing, the be serious movement, if you will, is it needs to happen. It needs to be here. The fans need more of this. I think shows like yours hold those folks accountable. Do you think we're ever going to reach a point where independent content creators carry more leverage in this space than legacy media and those pundits of yesteryear do?
I would be honest and say that they already do. I think when you look at, just go on YouTube and look at how many views ESPN gets versus AFTV or the Football Terrace or the United Stand. You know, all of these YouTubers, they get more views, and there's a reason for that because people like watching their content over ESPN and Steve Nichols and these guys, Craig Burley and those guys. Nobody wants to watch them. No offense, but they don't. Because
They don't.
the numbers speak for themselves. And I actually had the opportunity to be a guest on Grant Mall's podcast. I loved Grant. Everybody loved Grant. So rest in peace, Grant as well. But I did not know why he wanted me on his podcast. When he messaged me, I was like, why is he, because Grant Wall was like, he's the guy, I was like, I don't even know why you want to talk to me. And,
I mean, I can think of a few reasons, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But this is in the infancy of Shino's Arsenal, by the way. It was early on too. And I was like, I don't even know how you even know about me. And he was like, well, I saw your stuff. And, what I really like is that, you're not like everybody else. You don't have a trained background, but that's the good thing about it, and I was like, wow, like he really knows what he's talking about. Like Grant is the guy, and he's actually telling me that like I'm valid, like what I'm saying is valid. What I do is valid. It's not a joke, and that always stuck with me, is that like, this is where it's going. It's why these bigger companies are trying to replicate the types of content that these big channels that we watch all the time do. They're trying to replicate it, but they can't do it because it doesn't come across the same because they don't have the right people. You can't replicate it. It's authentic.
You can't pretend to be a fan.
No, you can't pretend to be a fan, and you can't pretend to be younger and fresh and fun, because nobody wants to be spoken at. They want to be spoken to. They want to feel like their opinions are valid. And it's not like this, well, we understand it and you don't. Football fans, everybody gets it. We get it. It's a sport. We don't need you to break it down. We got it. We just want to hear other fans put their opinions out there and be entertained. Relax. Put your shoulders down. We don't need you to be up there like cool. It's like, I don't know. But I think it's independent content creators are going to be the thing. They just will. It's no different than any other industry where I feel like, the forefront of like most industries now are people that are influencers or people that create content. They're the people that bring the money in. I feel like football is the same thing. It's slower, but it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming. People don't want to hear Alexi Lawless anymore. We're done.
Anymore. I mean, I would say sometimes in general, I think, it's I'm with ESPN too. Again, no offense, I guess, per se, but I've never hit mute on a halftime show faster in my life. And I watch La Liga, so I'm forced to deal with ESPN every single weekend. But I think, I agree with you. Some people will call me bullish in saying what you just said in terms of I believe even in the US that independent content creators, even the ones that are soccer specific or football specific, carry more weight and leverage and will continue to do so than legacy media. I think that, like you said, they're trying to copy and mimic everything that YouTubers have been doing for years now. But there is that difference, right, between what's going on in the UK with creation and what's going on here. And I will even say what's going on here is, in a good flattery way, if you will, right? Mimic what's going on overseas in the UK. You lived there once upon a time. I mean, very recently, I imagine, right? And you lived there for quite some time. I feel like your brand took off in the UK seeing you appear on the Football Terrace, a show that I watch a good amount. I've watched a little bit less because obviously when Arsenal loses,
When Arsenal are not doing well,
it's the worst. It is absolutely the worst. Like I just can't tune into it. Like I'll start to get upset, and I'm like, I can't do this right now. I'll have to go for a run or something. But I think like you having experienced both sides, what does this side of the world need to do? I feel like we're scrambling and just trying to keep up. And while we feel like we're being gate kept a little bit, right? Because it's not our league. It's we're not local to any of these clubs, but we still want to talk about it because we're so passionate about it. Is what is the gap between what happens here and what's going on in the UK with content, with the culture, the people, the fans, the clubs, the cities? Like, you experienced all of it. I'm so jealous of that fact. And I would love to understand from your perspective just where the gaps really are.
yeah, I feel like football over there is closer to the fans, where sports here feel farther away from the fans. Like it feels
Mhm.
like, yeah, I just don't feel like there's enough people in the US that are just popping on just like this and talking enough. It just feels very far away, if that makes sense. Like, um, I just feel like I don't see enough fans talking about the sport here as I do there. Every fan base, no matter if you follow Plymouth or Burnley or Arsenal, has a bunch of content creators talking about their games and got people watching it. But in America, it feels so different. I have fans that, or not fans, I have friends that have podcasts for like LAFC or something like that, but it's not as poppin' out here, and I'm not sure why. And I just feel like it's in the infancy in America, and you just have to keep going because the sport is growing, the fandom is growing. So the more people talk about it, the better. But you can't get deterred by the fact that you're not going to get as many views. And I feel like that's the thing is like when people start, they maybe stop because they don't see that there's like enough. But you have to get some people that just stick with it. But fans and football and community all go together in like the UK, all go together. After games, you go to the pub, you know, you talk about it all day. It's a part of your culture, your football team is. It's who you are, it's your identity. Everything that you do revolves around that schedule. Where I feel like sport here and soccer in particular is still kind of separate. It doesn't feel ingrained yet, but it's gonna get there. But I feel like also like Arsenal is definitely embedded in the community there because Arsenal used to be like a gun factory and then that's how it started and blah blah blah. So it's community based where it's not the same with like MLS teams. It's not, it's just not. So yeah, then I guess yeah, I feel like we just have to keep talking and keep doing our part. That's
Yeah.
because it's so starting now. It really is starting. And I know they're trying to put a big emphasis on like trying to grow the MLS and obviously trying to grow NWSL, and that's great. But I also want to see more American fans bring the level of like community and fun and family and culture of European teams here because it's so niche and it's so small, but I feel like it could be so much bigger. And it's hard in LA. I don't know how it is for you in Texas, but in LA,
No, I
it's
mean, it's
hard.
probably even more difficult than what you have in LA, to be honest.
Yeah, probably, huh? Because of the sports that are really popular there. I know in New York it's different. New
Hmm.
York is people are more invested in European football there, but in LA it feels difficult still.
Yeah.
You know?
I would say here, I mean, just because of the Hispanic population, you have a lot of Liga MX
Yeah.
fans. You have MLS is seen here as like a family friendly activity, going to
Mm,
watch soccer together, right? You kind of it's got NWSL vibes a little bit, right? It's at least based on where some of the pro teams are located today. But it's different, like you said. It's just the gap is still pretty massive because we
it-
are in our infancy. But do you think? I know you said you didn't really know, But if you had to pick something that could help us get there, right? We're entering the most exciting period of soccer in this country probably ever, right? We have Copa America coming 2024 this year. We have the Club World Cup coming 2025, and the World Cup coming in 2026. Is there something that can happen in this next 3-year period that would allow soccer to spike and boom to a top 3, maybe even a top 2 sport in this country?
Oof. What could we do? I mean, I feel like honestly, that's a really difficult question. I haven't really thought of anything. I mean, like, let me get your perspective on it. Let's brainstorm. Like, what do you think? Like, from now until 2026, what do you think are the biggest things that need to happen? Because I haven't even thought about it from that perspective.
Yeah, it's interesting when I think about it, and I'll fast forward a little bit into 2026 because I think it's the Copa America will be big. I just don't know if, from a talent perspective, I think a lot of what has to happen has to hinge on the success of an American branded entity, which is the U.S. men's national team or the U.S. women's national team. The women's national team has been the pillar of success for so many years here that I feel like we're just accustomed to it. It almost washes over us as a fan base.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's almost what you expect. It's not even a demand. It's an expectation for that team. So it's easy to be desensitized to it. I think in order for us to bridge that gap and start climbing up the ladder in terms of competing with other mainstream sports, we would have to see similar success at the men's national team level in at least one major tournament. And so when I look at the road ahead, I don't see it for Copa America. I just think that South American national teams are built different. I think that even on our home soil, there's an opportunity to go far. But I think that when it comes time to, kind of put up or shut up against the top 5 teams, so to speak, there's still a pretty big gap in ability. I think that we close that gap a little bit going into a World Cup where we've all seen magic, and I think a home nation has a strong opportunity. I think back to watching my first World Cup in 2002 when Korea made that run to the semifinals. I think there's some of that opportunity. I've heard other fans say we would have to make a very deep run at a major tournament like that for casual soccer fans, or more importantly, mainstream sports fans in America, to take this seriously, or to see more games like the World Cup final, where I feel like I had friends texting me saying, I didn't know soccer was like this. I didn't know, that was the craziest game I'd ever seen. I'd
Yeah.
never seen storylines like that. I'd never seen a game shift that fast in narrative. Like it's crazy. Why didn't you tell me about this? Like, dude, I've been preaching about soccer for I don't know how many years. But
Yeah.
that's where my mind goes. It has to be like one of those two scenarios. I just don't know if you could bank on the second one, because that's probably the greatest final we'll ever see.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of people feel like that's the most probably like the biggest game of our lifetime,
Could
because
be.
we watched Messi win the World Cup, and so it'll be hard to ever top it. But yeah, thinking about the U.S. men's national team and where that could go, I'm a big advocate for the U.S. men's national team to, no offense to Greg Berhalter, but to get a different coach
Yep.
and start taking this generation a little bit more seriously. For the U.S. women to have hired probably the best person that you could have hired in Emma Hayes. I feel like the U.S. men need to also be a little bit more serious and bring in someone, and probably somebody that's not American, as maybe unpopular as that may be. You automatically get more different eyes on your team if you bring in a certain type of coach. And I'm not saying that you have to bring in Pep, but Bielsa was available,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people wouldn't have taken him because of his, he doesn't speak a lot of English, but I'm telling you, this young group needs somebody that can help them develop, because I think we're wasting the group, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge advocate of those players going overseas and showing what the American players can do. I get that the MLS is the league, but I feel like they do much better when they play in Europe. That's my personal opinion. You look at somebody like Anthony Robinson, who I feel like for a while was kind of looked at somebody that was okay. He's one of the best left backs in the Premier League.
It's crazy.
Fundamentally, he is. Like, it cannot be disputed. Liverpool are looking at him to replace Andy Robertson. He's fantastic, and it's not a blip, you know. But he wouldn't have, if he did not stay at Fulham, he wouldn't be that player. I'm a huge advocate of it because it also makes people take them more serious. I know that that sounds bad because it's like, well, they should be able to play in our own league and be taken serious, but the MLS is not taken serious in Europe, you know. So I think the more of them that maybe skip over the normal route, you know, I was a little bit disappointed to see that Miles Robinson didn't take up the opportunity to go to Europe. You know, he stayed. I think the more of them go to Europe, the more eyes are on our players and the better it looks, you know? And that's a big thing. They did okay in the World Cup, you know, they in this past World Cup, did okay, but I think they were still a little bit disappointing considering the hype that's around some of these players, you know? And so
Yeah.
you make a really good point that the US men are definitely something that need to be looked at in terms of bringing eyeballs and making US soccer bigger.
Yeah.
Um,
I think it has to be simply because I think if you expect sports fans in general who aren't already tuning into soccer regularly to start picking up things like Major League Soccer or even watching any European league, the Prem, whatever it may be, to expect that to be the path, I think is naive. I think behavior, we can already see what they like, what they're used to, what sports they tune into. We shouldn't reinvent the wheel. I think that there is one opportunity, which I think we see it every World Cup or every major tournament, every couple to every 4 years. There are fans that come out of the woodwork that just simply want to support their country, right? Where they live, who they are. They simply just want to rep the red, white, and blue and just support their country. And if that just has to be a strong opportunity for us to take advantage of. It just
yeah,
it
for
just
sure.
does. And if we make a deep run, who knows?
Yeah, got to get a deep run. Well, I mean, Copa America, that's the insane one because, like you said, I don't anticipate a deep run. I don't.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's still a good opportunity to put at least, you know, a good showing on. I'm just a big advocate of, you know, if you have young players that need development, you have to have the right coach. And until we do that, I'm going to be a little skeptical, you know.
As
Right.
you are, as you are, respectfully, right? As you are. I think your skepticism is different than other forms of skepticism that we see from content creators on the internet today. But look, we have a few minutes left. I think what I want to talk about really quickly before we let you go is today's Arsenal, and this could not have come. In all honesty, as much as I hate it that again we're on this negative bounce at the moment, this could not have come at a better time because I think that this is when creators like yourself shine the most. It's easy to talk about a team when times are good. It's so easy, right?
Yeah.
Turn on the camera, you can hype up the win, hype up the players who played well, show the ratings, the scores, the stats, whatever it may be, and sort of times are good, the chat's good, everything's great. But I think when times are starting to get a little negative, you start to really see
Yeah.
how reactive our fan base can be. That goes for any club, any fan base. But I also, at the same time, we talked about a little bit before, right? I love this. I'm telling you, you need to create a movement around this. You absolutely have to. I think we need to be serious, like you've said multiple times, Jessica. Be serious. I think that it was almost a wake up call to me watching the video. I was like, yeah, okay, all right, I'm going to start looking at other options, and I think that we have to, as a fan base, right, broaden our horizons a little bit.
Yeah.
We're in a really interesting spot. We're recording on the 12th. Got 2.5 weeks left in January.
Mhm.
Everyone's looking at us. Everyone's looking at Arsenal. What do we do, right? Is this a wasted season if we don't make a move in January? Where do we go? Who do we go after? Who's in our budget, if you will? We got to keep in line with FFP. As you think about all these things, you're creating your content. I mean, how do you even think about who should we sign in January, right?
Mhm.
Nana and Tony, but based on your content, really aren't the answer. And I'll actually agree with you on that. I think the Nana shout to me seemed a little bit desperate. 50 million plus for a young holding mid or a box to box mid that may or
Yeah.
may not work out for us. Probably
Yeah.
not the move. But then, really, from your perspective, who is?
I mean, listen, look at how little business has been done in January so far. Everybody is dangerously close to FFP. Newcastle is struggling. Everybody's struggling. Like there's not a lot of movement. January is not a window to do big business in. That's what the summer window is for. And I feel like the reason why people want business done in January mostly is because there was huge questions around the business that was done this past summer. And, as an Arsenal fan, I cannot look at our summer business and not say there were some questions there. I'm a firm believer in like letting things cook a little bit and see how they work out. On paper, I didn't love the window. I love Declan Rice. Like he can do no wrong as far as I'm concerned. Perfect signing. Very unlucky with Timber getting the ACL, back in training now, doing a little bit of ball work. That's great. But the obvious, one of like the elephant in the room is Kai Havertz. And when you spend 65 million on a player that we watched at Chelsea really not hit the ground running, but also nobody can really figure out what his real position is, it was a strange move. It was. And from October, I feel like people had started talking about the January window, but it's just not a window that you do massive business in. It's just not. And unless it's going to be somebody that really, gives you a boost, I feel like you may be hurting your chances for good summer business by doing big things in a desperate way. Onana for me is definitely desperate because if we had been sitting in the summer window and I had said, yeah, we're linked with Amadou Onana from Everton, people would have been pissed because it would have been like, well, is this the best that we can do? And when you think about it from that perspective, it's like, okay, if we wouldn't have done it in the summer, why would we do it now? We're out of 2 domestic cups. Depending on how you think about the title, I'm somebody that looks at it from a analytical aspect sometimes. We've dropped a lot of points. So unless Man City and Liverpool continue to drop points, which historically they don't, in the second half of the season, they usually do better. Arsenal shot themselves in the foot pretty badly in December. You think back to the Aston Villa game, a game that we were the much better side, probably should have won it. West Ham, Fulham, we've dropped a lot of points already this season. Fulham at the beginning of the season. So it's tough. We're in a tough space. But the January window for me is just not somewhere to shoot yourself in the foot for the summer. And I'm not expecting any big business. What I am expecting is for the players to relax and stop overthinking being in front of the goal. I cannot believe we have a team that cannot score goals. This is not my Arsenal. My Arsenal loves scoring goals. Like I've never seen a group of players be so afraid in front of the net. And so I'm expecting them to be in Dubai, relax. You're playing for Arsenal. You're not going to a funeral. Have fun. You're living the life. You really are. And come to the game like against Crystal Palace and do the business. We've been creating enough chances. Our defense is great. We just need that extra little bit. I think that can come with the players that we have. I'm cautiously optimistic about our form going up. Now, whether or not that form uptick is good enough for us to win anything, that's yet to be seen. But do I think we'll be as bad as we were before this break? No. This team is much better than what it showed.
Yeah, I agree. And lastly, 'cause I feel like you and I have seen so many Arsenal teams over the years, so many, and they each had kind of a characteristic to them that was uniquely identifying, right? And you could pick a year, and I could feel like I could give you one word that I would use to describe that team. What is today's Arsenal missing? Because there is, I mean, whether it's personality or a certain type of mentality or whatever it may be, there's something that's missing that would truly take this team over the top and be true. I don't want to say just title contenders, but true contenders for every trophy that's available. Period. Champions League included. There's something that's missing. What is that thing?
They're missing arrogance. They're missing arrogance. They're missing attitude and audacity. That's the main thing that they're missing. These players are really good.
Mhm.
Anytime that somebody, is saying that so-and-so is not good, Saka is not good, blah, 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 Odegaard's not good, I'm like, be serious. These players are really good. We watch them with our own 2 eyes. They're great. And if you put Saka in Man City's team, you put Martinelli in Liverpool's team, you put Odegaard in Bayern's team, they would fly. But they may fly because there's other players in the team that can lift that burden a little bit. You know, like if Saka goes to Man City, he knows KDB and Haaland are there. If Martinelli is in Liverpool's team, there's Trent and Salah. But I think what I feel like I've learned about this group is that as good as they are, they're still missing their Thierry. They're still probably missing their Vieira. They're missing players that are going to just drag you over the line. And that doesn't mean you're not an amazing player. Every team has players with roles. Some of them are just consistent performers. They're top players. You know, they do this, they do that. But really, you got to have those guys in your team that just say, you know what, we're winning this game, period. And I don't care how we get it done. And I think Arsenal really missed those players at the front end of the pitch. I think you need another midfielder of world-class standard with Odegaard and Declan Rice. And I definitely think you need a striker that can hold up that number 14 like a boss. You know, no offense to Eddie, but whoever's going to wear that jersey needs to know what it means, you know? And we're not there yet. You know, but Arsenal have an opportunity in the summer to rectify that and bring in 2 top quality players to play in those positions. Because I think we have those personalities at the back, if I'm honest. I think Saliba has it. I think Saliba has that audacity. He is arrogant. He is. And Declan Rice has it in a different way. He has it in a almost like a more of a British way where it's not super arrogant, but he definitely knows he has it, you know? And we missed that up front. And that's not to shade Saka or anybody. I think they're fantastic, but they're not the type of players that can do it on their own. And so that's what they're missing. And they have a young manager, so he can't go out there and do it for them. So he needs to provide some players there in those positions to help those players out.
Yeah, I could not have said any better myself, to be honest. Arrogance. And in a way, even if it's a quiet arrogance like what Saliba has, right? You know he's not getting beat to a ball. He's not going to let someone pass him. I think that Thierry's arrogance is probably the best form of it. Vieira had it too, don't get me wrong, as a captain, but I think like when you would see moments from Thierry, everyone thinks back to Arsenal, Real Madrid in the Champions League, and when he scores that goal, he knew. It's like, guys, it's like why did you doubt me? I was going to do it this whole time, right? It's like he knew, and he could just feel it. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think we need that personality, that killer up front that just takes the game by the scruff.
If we had that player during the run-in last season, even with Rob Holding at the back, because I know a lot of people were like, Rob Holding, blah, blah, blah. And I agree. We would have won the league still, because those types of players make the Rob Holdings of the world obsolete back there. We didn't have that thing. It's tangible. And when you look at Man City and you see KDB and that team, he's their arrogant guy, you know? Even look at Liverpool, they have like Trent and Salah. They're inevitable. Like it's going to happen for them. Arsenal miss those players. They just do. And so until we have them, I think it's going to be really difficult to win anything significant, but may have to wait to the summer. But Arsenal Cronkies, pull out that credit card, get to spending, because we still have work to do. But I think Arsenal will be fine. It may not be this season. I know people are going to be super disappointed if we don't win anything this season, but they'll get the striker. Just hopefully they get the right one.
Yeah, it's a marathon anyway, not a sprint. And I will say this: I'm still, like you said, cautiously optimistic. Not so much about the league title. I think more so. It sounds weird to say with Champions League, but I do think it's because of how we are played against in the league versus how we are attacked in the Champions League. I think no team in the Champions League is going to sit back. They have way too much pride. They're way too good. They're going to leave themselves open. I think it just allows for more play that we are used to and that we love as Arsenal fans. So, man, I'm not even gonna lie, Jessica. I'm about to go watch like a Thierry comp, I think, and we get my my passion back up and really be fueled for the fact that January is probably not going to be what so many fans are hoping it will be. But that's okay. I think summer needs to be massive, though. It needs to be massive. We have to find the right personalities.
Go watch a Thierry comp, and then do me a favor and go watch a Jack Wilshere comp. A little fact about me is that he's one of my favorites. And every time I watch a Jack Wilshere comp, I get like a little tear in my eye because he was supposed to be it. He was supposed to be that guy. But when you watch him play, you can understand why. I think it was Xavi. He said that he could have played with them.
Yeah.
He could
There
have
was
played
that
with
rumor, remember? Like I think like people were saying that like, oh, Jack might get looked at by Barcelona. I was like, that's
Yeah.
so crazy.
That's
to me.
high praise.
Yeah.
Iniesta and Xavi are saying you could have played with them.
Yeah.
That's
Crazy.
crazy.
That first leg win, right? I'm
Yeah.
oh man.
Just-
In
we'll never
2011, it's
forget
just
Jack
never
Wilshere
forget.
against Barcelona. Champions League.
Crazy. Well, look, Jess, we've been here for 90 minutes just talking, brainstorming, sharing ideas, stories. I've loved every second of it. I can't thank you enough for coming on the show today. I think it's very rarely do I get a chance to create content with other Arsenal fans just because of the content that we do. And I'm always just like the only guy in there trying to bat for our club. And man, like I said, the best way I could have ended the week. So look, we're gonna call it here. Jessica Black, seriously, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. For anyone who stuck around to the end of the episode, go check her out. She knows Arsenal. We're gonna link everything down in the description below. I think if you are an Arsenal fan, if you're a fellow Gooner, again, I think it's just going to be a breath of fresh air, especially if you've been tuning into every other reactive person on the internet. It's going to slow you down in a way that will only uplift you heading into a match day weekend. So can't put it any better than that. Jessica, thank you so much. Before we go, though, you mentioned the Cannon Club. Anything else you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, guys, you could just go on YouTube and find me there. Pretty much do 2 streams every day in the weekdays, you know, so if you can't catch the earlier one, you can catch the late one. I'll be talking about Arsenal there. So that's pretty much all I have to plug for now. Hopefully next time I talk to you, I'll have more things to plug, but for now, that's it.
Hell yeah. Well, look, I'm about to go check out that Cannon Club. Whenever you get that going again, let me know. I'm happy to subscribe, and I need to have more conversations like the one you and I had today. It's refreshing's the easiest word that comes to mind right now, but again, it's just positive in so many ways. So again, Jess, thank you so much. For anybody tuned in, thank you so much. Like the video down below, subscribe to the channel here at GOLZtv, and for everybody here at Box to Box, my name is Jose. We'll catch you guys next time.